Welcome to the MADLOVE Your Life Show. I'm Mary D., the Joy Catalyst, here to be your host and transformation guide. Mad Love is about the mad, making a difference, and love is what we serve up to live a delicious life. My intention is to help you spark new ideas, break limiting beliefs, and align with your deepest dreams and desires. Get ready for laughter, inspiration, and finding your inner roar in every show. Good morning, everyone. It is great to have you back here on the MADLOVE Your Life Show. I'm your host, Mary D., business and life strategist, transformation guide, and your trusted co-pilot for turning life's pivots into purpose. If you're standing in a season of change, maybe it's a business block, a relationship shift, or rediscovery of who you're becoming, take a deep breath. You're not behind. You are in the right place at the right time. And you don't have to do it alone. Around here, we blend strategy with soul because real clarity isn't just about having a plan. It's about feeling grounded, confident, and excited for what's next. I help purpose-driven humans like you simplify whatever is feeling heavy, get you back on track, and expand what's possible for the future with integrity, intention, and joy. So if your heart's whispering or maybe screaming that it's time for more ease, more clarity, and more impact, you can head over to maryd.com to book a private session, and let's build on what's working, adjust what's not, and shape a life that feels aligned, spacious, and magical, designed just for you. And before we begin, a quick love note. Everything shared here on the MADLOVE Your Life Show is meant to inspire, not to prescribe. I'm not your doctor or therapist, but rather your soul sister. Guests on the show are sharing their experience and opinions and expertise, and no information should be construed as legal, medical, or financial advice. So take what resonates, leave what doesn't, and always consult the pros for personalized advice. My guest today is Chris Reade. He is a longtime tech visionary and community builder. He founded Carrollton Enterprise Services in 2004 and LookFar in 2015, leading both into two of the Gulf's top technology development firms, powering everything from major disaster recovery initiatives like Road Home and Deepwater Horizon claims to government scale projects, including the 2020 census and top secret clearance systems. Through LookFar and LookFar Labs, he supported nearly 200 startups and helped shape Louisiana's modern startup ecosystem. Chris also founded the Ada Lovelace Women in Technology Awards and the Southern Startup Report, and serves on executive boards across New Orleans, including the Business Council, Arts Council, and GNO Inc. He's been recognized on the Silicon Valley 100 and the Biz New Orleans 500, and previously led both Entrepreneurs Organization Louisiana and the Young Leadership Council. So Chris, welcome to the call today. I really want to just kick us off with the question I ask every guest first, which is, what do you know now that you wish you had known before you got started?
Great. Well, first of all, thank you for having me on. It's going to be a really fun conversation. Related to diabetes and the stuff that I write about, what I wish I had known is that how much sugar was messing with my life, and just I didn't realize how much it was, and what that would ultimately cost me in terms of trouble and effort and health and all of that stuff. And so that's a lot of why I wrote the book that I wrote on diabetes. Was kind of pay that forward a little bit, because I do wish that I had known what's in my book 10 years ago, 15 years ago. It would have made a big difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's talk about that, because diabetes is a huge epidemic, obviously touching lots of people's lives. There's also a whole up and coming like pre-diabetes. We're also seeing it rise in children. So what is that? What's going on? What is happening in society? Like, what's changed and shifted that it's just really showing up these days?
I mean, I would say the biggest thing that you see in terms of why has diabetes grown in my lifetime from a relatively small issue to something that affects a third to 40% of the population, depending on what numbers you use, but certainly one heck of a lot of people. And I think a lot of that is processed foods and a lot of change in lifestyle. And that's actually, to a certain degree, what I've written about is how to change your life in a way that is actually livable, in a way that is doable for the average person, and is relatively straightforward to follow without extreme diets or extreme measures that you probably won't be able to keep up with.
Got it.
So
Got
for
it.
me, it goes back to 2017. Um, and I was, it was really, of all the things to change my life, my insurance agent screwing up my life insurance renewal was not the thing that I would have thought would change my life.
Okay.
But it was in the space of 12 months because of a screw up in insurance. Like I was saying, I ended up having to take these kind of standard blood test screenings you take for life insurance twice in 12 months.
Mm.
And in those 12 months, I went from an A1C, which is the standard kind of measure that you use for diabetes. And so 5.7 and lower is non-diabetic. 5.7 to about 6.5 is kind of pre-diabetic. And then 6.5, 6.7, depending on who you are, and above is full-on diabetic. So in the previous year, at the end of 2016, beginning of 2017, my A1C had been normal, 5, 4, 9, something like that. Less than a year, just about a year later, it was at 9.2. So I skipped all the stuff in the middle where your doctor says, you know, Mary, you really should cut down on dessert a little bit, like that sort of discussion. I never had those. It went from you're totally fine to you're totally screwed in 1 year.
Right.
And I think that's why it caused it to change my life. I think if it had been a gradual thing like it is for many people, I
Yeah.
don't think I'd have gone to the trouble to figure out another option. So for me, that's where that impetus to change my life came from. Because when I got that diagnosis and or that first reading, really, I went into the doctor and I had, like most guys my age, I hadn't been to a doctor in a while.
Why? Let's talk about why that is too. But keep going, and we're
Yeah,
going to
sure.
circle
So
back
like
to
most,
that.
most middle-aged dudes, I was like, the doctor, we don't need to do that. But anyway, so obviously I went, and the lady, she says, the doctor, she says to me, okay, well, we're going to get you start a metformin. If that doesn't work for you, we're going to get you hooked up with some insulin and we get going. I'm like, whoa, time out.
Mm.
What? She's like, this is a progressive incurable disease. You'll have this the rest of your life.
Mm.
Period. And I was like, I walked out of her office in a daze and I was like, I'm not accepting that answer. I'm too young. That's not the way this is going.
Mm.
And so I did one hell of a lot of research and a lot of experimenting and a lot of, like I said, I think if it had hit me more gradually, I probably wouldn't have been so active about it. But I changed my life. I changed how I eat. I based it all on science and all on things that are very well understood and not particularly new information.
Okay.
And I got my A1C down from 9.1 or 9.2, whatever it was, that October to 4 months later, it was under 5.7. And
Amazing.
most people would say without taking a lot of drugs, you can't do that. And that's not accurate. And diabetes is also not incurable, and it is not necessarily progressive. In other words, it doesn't always get worse. But that is what we kind of have as our default in America. And so it took me some time, some effort, but once I figured out how to do it, it's kind of not effortless, but pretty close. And I don't take any drugs, and my A1C has stayed normal all these years.
That's amazing. That's really
Yeah.
amazing. I think one of the conversations that I love having with people is because obviously I'm a breast cancer survivor and I
Mm.
chose a holistic path to healing. So I'm much on the same page of like, hey, like how can I not necessarily have to throw a drug into my body? And I believe that there are drugs out there that can do great things and are helping people, shape their lives in certain ways. And also I believe there's an overuse and also we're over prescriptioned here, in the US, and we do have a
Yeah.
pill for everything, right? And so what is the thing that helped you become more empowered for yourself? Like what was is there a level of intuition that you tap into? Is it just a gut feeling that you have? Like
So
what?
I'm a programmer by trade.
Okay.
I'm a software developer, and or I was. Now I don't do it very much anymore. But anyway, and in that world, systems are everything. I have a system to do every single thing, and people who are drawn to that world, like I was, are very system oriented. And systems tend to be self reinforcing. They tend to be simple if they're good. And they tend to have certain rules that you can follow that can be flexible enough to adapt to different situations. And so that's what I was looking for.
Okay.
And what I found, and if anybody listening to this takes nothing away from anything I say except this sentence, here it is. Soluble fiber can and will change, if you have enough of it on a regular enough basis, will push diabetes into remission. I don't like using the word cure, but it will push it into remission. Full stop. There's lots of other ways you can get to that same result. I have good friends of mine who had similar problems and went a full carnivore or paleo style diet. To be honest with you, I didn't think I had the willpower for that.
Okay.
I didn't think I could just eat meat and fish and stuff like that for the rest of my life. I honestly didn't think I had. I'm not a big willpower guy, so it had to be a system. It had to be something I could do everywhere at every time without too much effort.
Yeah.
Or I wouldn't do it, because in my world, ease of use equals use. If it's simple, you'll do it. If it's not simple, you're probably going to stop.
Right.
And so I looked for stuff that I could do that way. And that's what my whole book is about.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And can you tell us the name of the book so that everyone, because I think you brought a copy so we can actually see it on
Beating
the camera.
Diabetes. There we are.
Beating Diabetes. Beautiful.
Beating Diabetes. And it's really, so I never, to be honest with you, I never thought to write any of this down.
Oh.
I fixed what was wrong in my life very quickly. Kind of worked through, I tried a bunch of different stuff to kind of go along with it. But at the end of the day, kind of settled in on just really leveraging soluble fiber. And which I'll explain what that is in a minute. But that was for me. And I have a whole chapter, I call it the scarlet letter D. In America, if you are labeled a diabetic, that colors your medical history from that moment all the way to the future, to the end of time.
Right.
And so I was very nervous, because in America, the way it works is your first plus 5.7, your first plus 6.5 test as a diabetic is just one. If you get a second one, that constitutes a diagnosis, which is why I was hell-bent there was never going to be a second one that was over 5.7. And so I was very nervous to ever write this book, to write this stuff down. It's not a thing I wanted to own up to and kind of live with that scarlet letter D. Sure. And so I never wrote it. I never talked to really about it. Only close friends of mine knew this about me. And but then one of them, my buddy Tim, he called me up, and he's like, he's a contractor, but he was in the Army, and so he'd gone to the VA. He used his VA for medical. Gone to the VA, and his A1C was 13. 13 is enough to put you in the hospital. And so he calls me up and he says, dude, my A1C is 13. They want to put me in the hospital and pump me full of drugs, and I don't know what the hell to do. What did you do? And I was like, all right. I started writing it down. I was like, no. I need to write you an email. So I started writing an email, and it's like, there's more detail you need here. So then I wrote a book, basically. So I wrote the book for my buddy, and then I realized that there were a lot of other people in that situation who didn't want to take insulin, who didn't want to take drugs, who wanted to be able to go on a vacation and not start with, oh crap, do I have enough of my medicine to make it through this vacation? Right? I didn't want to do that. Like, I wanted to be able to, hey, we're going to go to Cancun. Let's have fun and leave, and not go, oh crap, we better see if I can get a refill on that stuff before I take off. I mean, like, I didn't want to live that way. I wanted to live like what I would consider a normal person. And so I wrote this book for people like that, who wanted what I had figured out how to do, which was to live a normal life without drugs, without extreme dieting or extreme behavior that I wouldn't be able to sustain. And so that's what it's about.
Nice. I love that. Yeah. I think there's that people forget that our health management can have a lot to do with our lifestyle. And if we're constantly having to fill pills or go to a certain doctor's appointment or whatever, like, that actually impacts our quality of life. And it becomes part of our life.
Money. Yeah, it's all of it.
Yes, and your money. Yes, let's not forget that piece.
People are like, people read my book and they ask me questions. They're like, so doesn't it cost a lot of money to eat all of these, like, broccoli and Brussels sprouts and all this stuff? Isn't it healthy food more expensive? I'm like, as opposed to Ozempic? Ozempic's like $1,000 a month. Like, believe me, you can buy a hell of a lot of broccoli for that, man.
That's
so,
right.
So yeah, I mean, I think being healthy is cheaper, honestly.
Yeah.
It's cheaper and it's easier.
I have to agree with you. And what I like to tell people is, you can look at the cost of, good quality ingredients and good nourishing food, but then you can also look at the cost of feeling terrible. I mean, put a
Mm-hmm.
price on that. If you've ever been sick with anything, like let's just even go with a cold or the flu for a couple days or a week or however long it lasted.
Yep.
Tell me there's not one person here
Oh,
that can relate to that and says, oh man, like the moment that sore throat comes on, the moment the fevers start happening and the chills, you're like, oh, why does this feel so
well,
terrible?
and-
Like,
yeah, absolutely. And you get to like the whole question. So in my way of doing it, so the head of sales in my company, she and I work together a lot, and we travel and go on sales pitches, do whatever we got to do, right? So we're together. We eat a lot of meals together. When it came out with this book, she says to me, she read it, and she's like, "I've eaten like 100 meals with you, and I never noticed you were eating differently than anybody." And she's like, "I noticed you eat healthy, but I never really noticed there was a thing to it." I was like, that's the point. Like, this is a me thing or a you thing. It
right.
shouldn't be like, it doesn't need to be a public thing. It can be just like normal life. That's what I would try for, because honestly, that was the I what wouldn't I have paid to get my normal life back?
That's right. That's right. And that's what happens is you're on a quest. And once that quest happens, like you won't let anything get in the way of it. And
No.
it's much easier if your path is already one of health and wellness and and prevention in so many of these things. And I'm curious, Chris, like what are, when you said soluble fiber, I think we hear
Sure.
that thrown around a lot. Give us
Yep.
some great sources of soluble fiber
Sure.
so the people listening can just grab, like they're on their way to lunch right now, right? they
Yep.
they're like, they want to know, like, what should I actually be putting in my body?
So yesterday, I went to lunch with my daughter. She was back from college for the holiday and whatnot, and we stopped at this Mexican place that we go to a lot. And we had chips, but I had the black bean dip instead of pico de gallo, right? So instead of like tomatoes, which are not bad, but instead of the tomatoes, I had a black bean dip. Why? Because any form of beans really, but black bean dip or any form of that is tons of soluble fiber, right?
Okay.
And then I had as part of I had quesadilla, chicken quesadilla, and so as part of that, I had guacamole with it, another good source of soluble fiber. So what I try to do is at every single meal have a amount of soluble fiber. I try to get 3 to 4 grams of soluble fiber a meal, more or less. Um, and so what that looks like is what I just described. If I go have sushi, I'm going to go order an entire appetizer of edamame for myself. And so I'll just throw down a whole bowl of edamame, which is
Nice.
amazing source of soluble fiber and delicious.
Yeah, and
Um,
easy.
and easy, right? And that's
Mm-hmm.
one of the things you'll see if you follow my Instagram is I go to restaurants and I look at the menu and I film it so you can like, okay, this is this restaurant, this is the kind of food it is. Bing, 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 bing. Here's the soluble fiber items on this menu. And I just, because like I said, after you get into it for a while and it's chickpeas, it's broccoli, it's Brussels sprouts, it's I had yesterday or the day before I had beet salad, which was
Mm.
freaking delicious. Beets are a fantastic source of soluble fiber. There's a lot of them. Once you get into it, and that's a couple of the chapters in my book are like how to find it in the grocery store and how to find it in a restaurant menu. Um, Once you realize what you're looking for, you'll realize it's kind of everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you also have to get into realizing like where is sugar hiding too. So I ate
Mm.
Mexican yesterday. You know what I didn't eat? The rice,
Okay.
right?
Interesting.
Rice is sugar. Rice is
Oh,
basically sugar.
got
It's
it.
why it's the
Got it.
staple food for half the world's population. It's very high in glucose. So basically potatoes, so like French fries, as much as I love them, are pretty much
Mm.
out. Baked
Yeah.
potatoes are out. White starches of all sorts, right? So that's
Okay.
rice, that's potatoes, stuff like that. Once you realize where the sugar's hiding in the meal, and once you realize where the soluble fiber is hiding in the meal, then it becomes a really simple matching game where you're like, oh, I skipped the rice and I had the black beans, and we're good, right? And if the tortilla is there, if I can have the corn tortilla, which has about a third of the amount of flour in it than the flour
And the
tortilla,
flour. Yep.
then, and so it's like, it's this little game that I play. That's what I was saying. It's a system to try and get as much soluble fiber and as little dietary sugar. And that's why you realize, so soluble fiber, well, it's like I said, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, green beans, chickpeas, beans of all sorts,
Mm.
chia seeds, blah, 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 blah. It's all over the place. There's also full fiber. And full fiber is great for your guts. Whole wheat, stuff like that. All great for your digestive system, all sorts of other positive benefits. Will do nothing for sugar. Won't do a darn
Mm.
thing for your sugar levels.
Okay.
Soluble fiber works because it slows your digestion down. And when it slows your digestion down, you have less sugar spikes. And the spikes are what make you diabetic. And that's damage done to your organs. So what
Right.
happens in a normal person, so me, 25-year-old version of me, throws down a sleeve of Oreo cookies. My pancreas goes, oh my God, there's so much sugar. And
Right.
then jacks out a whole ton of insulin to handle the sugar. That's what a normal body does.
Okay.
When you get insulin resistant on your way to diabetes, or if you have diabetes, it means, it's not working so well. And so then instead of being able to pump out a bunch of insulin, those islet cells stop pumping it out, and you get these spikes, and the spikes hurt your organs. And that's why
Mm.
your teeth start falling out, and you get bad circulation. All the bad complications of diabetes come from the sugar spikes. And so by eliminating the sugar spikes, you basically push diabetes into remission. That's how it works.
Got it. Got it. Beautiful. Yeah, I have my grandmother. I remember her having diabetes, and I remember how much that affected her. But I also
Oh,
remember
yeah.
her diet, and so that's all. That was such a big piece of it. And I was thinking through what you said. I have a brother who is in his mid 60s, and he's in amazing shape. Amazing shape. Like body fat, I think is like 8%, 5%.
Yeah.
It's super low. And he doesn't go to the gym. He just does like normal things. Like he gardens. He
Yep.
has a 10-acre property. He hunts. Like he's moving, shaking all the time. He's just a mover. So he moves his body, number one.
Yep.
But number two, his diet, and has been his diet for as long as I can remember. And you're gonna remember I'm almost 50, so it's as long as I can remember. His diet has actually been very consistent and very much the same, which I know might sound boring. However, his health is such a great reflection, I think, of his diet, because it's Brussels sprouts and
Uh-huh.
beets and cabbages and carrots and beans and
Yeah.
like green beans, and it's this beautiful rainbow. He does the whole rainbow technique of like eat
Uh-huh.
the rainbow, and so every meal is this rainbow of vegetables, and that's mostly what's on his plate. He does do rice, but I believe that's because he burns through it so quickly.
He
So for
probably
him,
does.
he
Yeah.
needs the source of carb. And he also does some sweet potato. And then he has his, a little bit of a supplement that he has, like some calcium and stuff that he throws on top of it.
Sure.
And that's how he eats it. And then his protein, he raises his own chickens. So he does eggs in the morning,
Yep.
and then his lunch and dinner are either venison or rabbit. He raises rabbits and of course eats them, and then hunts and venison. He gets enough
Yeah.
for
I
the
mean,
year, and
honestly,
super clean.
that's not materially different from where I'm at. I mean, it's in the margins difference. And a big part of it, what you just described, is if you live in a city, even, and you're not out hunting and doing that stuff,
Right.
everything you just described is on a menu at the restaurants you go to right now. That's why I do this on Instagram, because people are like,
Yeah.
oh, how do I do this? And it's like, it's actually really easy. Once you
Right.
know what you're looking for, I call it a background hum. I don't even notice it anymore.
Yeah.
And I just know what to order automatically at anywhere I go. And that way it's not difficult. What I would say, and I think it's really, really important, there's a couple of things that you did mention that I'm sure your brother's probably into. One of them you talked about is walking around. Earlier this year, there was a study that was amazing. It blew me away. I was very surprised about it. That showed that if you go for a small amount of exercise, we're talking 5 minutes after a meal, we're talking like a walk around the block,
Yeah.
right? That can lower your blood sugar by about 20 to 25%.
Amazing.
Which is so simple. So for me, because I am a big believer in what they refer to as habit stacking,
Yep.
which means stack something that you want to do, an aspirational thing, with a thing you're definitely going to do. So what I did, I have a dog, and so I normally walk the dog right before bed. So instead what I did is I moved dog walking time to right after dinner. So now we finish dinner, and before we go clean up dinner, we take the dog for a walk, which gets me that little pop. that little
Yeah.
like sugar use pop for nothing. I got to walk the dog anyway.
Right.
So by walking the dog to a slightly different time slot, I've gotten myself a 20% bonus, if you will,
Yeah.
on controlling sugar for doing nothing. It's doing something I was going to do anyway.
That's right.
And so I think those are really important. And then, and I imagine your brother's probably this way too, from the kind of person you're describing, uh, any form of stress reduction, meditation,
Yes.
mindfulness, whatever, any quieting of your mind, because if you're anxious, the more anxious you are, the worse your sugar control gets.
That's right.
So good night's sleep, a little in my case, I like transcendental meditation, but any meditation, really doesn't matter what, but
Yeah.
some way of calming your brain down and some way of getting a decent night's sleep. And that alone will knock down your A1C over a month for sure.
Absolutely.
And then lastly, the thing I like to push people on too, because I think it's really important, is forgiveness. Like if I torture myself over every time I fail on to keep to what I try to do, I would never have done this since 2017. No way. Not in a million years. Like that would never happen.
Right.
Which doesn't mean to say like, oh, well, I screwed up and had some king cake for Mardi Gras. Well, let's have a whole king cake, right?
Right.
It's
Right.
more saying, yeah, I did. I went to my friend's house. We had a couple cocktails. I decided to have some king cake, but I kept it to a small piece. And the next day I was a good boy. I got to forgive myself for those things, because if you don't, you will not stick to anything.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, you'll give up and you'll say, "Oh, well, I messed it up, so let me just go back to these terrible habits." It's like, no,
Yep.
no, no. You dust yourself off, you get up and you just get back on the wagon again.
It's
And
huge.
yeah,
It's
that's the
hugely
part
important.
people miss. Yes, no, I totally agree with you. And I think so much of this too is remembering that even for most Americans, for most people in general, anywhere in the population, even if they took these principles that you talked about today, which is eating better, getting a little exercise and movement after we eat. Like, let's just pretend it's just those two things, right?
Yep.
It's down to soluble fiber and movement after we
Yep.
eat. Let's pretend it's just those two. If everyone did that 5 out of 7 days a week or 3 out of 7 days a week, especially if they're coming from doing it 0 times, that is a positive impact that can show up in their life and make at least an incremental change. And as we do those things, they become habits. And as we get habits, we learn, they just become part of how we operate. And I think that's the key here, is that you're looking for making these shifts that feel natural and feel doable and feel like a win. So if you're like, there's no way I can do Brussels sprouts every single day. I'm used to chicken fingers and fries every day. It's like, okay, but what would happen? What would happen if we could replace maybe 2 days or maybe
Yep.
3 days, and then start there? Because I found that food is also a very learned behavior.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I figured this out later in life. I was like, oh, food is learned, and it has so much to do with even how we were raised, around a table. Like
Oh, yeah.
where were the things served? Because that's probably where your palate is at. And you can actually retrain your palate, your brain, your system
Oh, yeah.
to eat better.
No, you're totally spot on. I was just thinking about when I first kind of knocked sugar out of my life in a big way. So I was make sure the spoon stands straight up in my coffee kind of sugar, hit with the
Wow.
coffee.
Okay.
And so I ditched the sugar out of my coffee, and it's been many, many years since I had sugar. Now, if I go to the coffee shop and I order, coffee or whatever, and they accidentally hit it with the sugar or a simple syrup or something like that, I taste it. I'm like, oh, I can't eat that.
Right.
I can't drink that. Right. It's just like you don't realize, like, once you change a behavior like that, it tends to be self-reinforcing. Cause like I said, I still love, like, I'll sit down, like we're coming into Mardi Gras season in a couple months, and I'll sit down and I live in New Orleans, where like king cake's a whole season, and I'm definitely
Right.
going to have some king cake, right? There's no two ways about it. But I'll have one little piece, because if I had more, it's just like, oh, this is too much, right? And you don't
Mhm.
think that that's going to be the way that is, but it really is.
Yeah,
When
it
you
is.
when you kick that stuff out, when it comes back, it's not actually as palatable as you remember it. And then you're like, well, I'd have a little of it, but that's about it.
Yes,
And it's
yes.
funny because I'd never thought that would be. I thought like that, and it's still true. I mean, look, I'm not a big willpower, like you must struggle and do it. You could, take the pain sort of thing. I'm not that
Right.
guy, right? I am a lazy, generally easy pushover for temptation, right? Which is why it had to be a system for me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm not Mr. Willpower. Like, I have a good friend of mine. He does the paleo thing. He's got willpower for days. I mean, like,
Mm.
there's no amount of like self torment he won't go through. I am not that guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
I need something that's simple, and if I fall apart and forget to do it, I need to be able to get back on it easy, and not have these kind of you must do it this way stuff.
Right.
Um, and so this works for me, and I think it works for the average person because I'm not changing so much that I've got to do like a reevaluation of my whole life. And on the
Right.
positive, I mean, the other thing you talked about health in general. I didn't have high cholesterol or any of that stuff. I was like borderline, like a lot of middle-aged guys. All of that stuff's low now. And I didn't do
Mm-hmm.
anything for that. I wasn't even trying to do anything for that. I also dropped 25 pounds. Didn't
Mm-hmm.
try that either.
Yeah.
But like I said, let's talk about the sushi thing, right? If you go to their sushi place and you have a giant bowl of edamame at the beginning of the meal, you know what you're not going to do? Have dessert. Because you just threw down, a whole big ass bowl of edamame.
Yeah, soluble
You're not
fiber.
having, it's like you still feel so full when you eat soluble fiber that you're like, I don't even want, so you end up dropping weight by accident, really. It's also a great weight loss program. My buddy
Mm-hmm.
Tim, who I mentioned earlier, Tim dropped 90 pounds in 5 months.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, and knocked his A1C down from 13 to 4.9 in the
I
same
love
4
that.
months.
I love
No
that. These
drug.
were great. Yeah, these were great tips for I think for a lot of people today that are really actionable, Chris, and also easy to implement. I feel like easy, we all have to eat. We can just make better food choices,
Food
and
is
then the
medicine.
movement piece after we actually ingest is great. And I want to throw one more thing out there for those of
All
you who
right.
do love your rice. I come from an Asian family. We are obviously rice eaters.
Oh yeah.
However, there is a little bit of a hack that we do around here. And one of them is instead of using water when we cook our rice, we use bone broth because bone
Oh,
broth
that's clever.
adds protein. Yeah. And
Uh-huh.
then the other piece is you can also add coconut oil or even coconut milk. So if you really like the taste of coconut, you get a nice fat that is combined
Mhm.
with that carb, and that helps also ease
I
the
also
load
do,
on your
there's a
body.
wild rice, that I love that's
Wild
really
rice is
actually
great.
like a tiny amount of rice and mostly forms of seeds. It's like,
Hmm.
but it's so every time we have it, I'm like, "Oh, man, we gotta have more of this." And it's great for you, right? It's a
Yeah,
form of rice that is really, really good for you. It's usually the, like, cheap sticky rice that you get that's usually that's the stuff you
right,
really wanna stay away from.
right,
Interesting, and this is why educating yourself and reading up about this stuff is so important. You
right.
mentioned your brother's sweet potatoes.
Yeah,
So it's weird. Regular old Idaho baked potatoes, like you have everywhere for Thanksgiving, right? That is full of sugar. Sweet potatoes, weirdly, not. Even though they're called
I
sweet
know
potatoes, they're
potatoes.
actually
Yeah,
not full. They're actually significantly better. So I've actually learned to love sweet potatoes,
yeah,
as an alternative. So
yep,
yeah, and that's why it's worth reading up about and learning, because a little bit
absolutely.
of learning can take you a long way in this.
That's right. That's right. It can. Yeah, I feel really fortunate. One of my really, my one of my best friends. She's been a nutritionist
Hmm.
for as long as I can remember, and she's had such an influence on my life and my family's life. And we used to hire her at conferences to come speak on
Oh
the health
yeah,
piece, and we'd always put her right before lunch because it was always great to have,
that's
and
so
then at
smart.
lunchtime you could watch and just see everybody in the room like
You're
feeling
like,
like,
oh
the
no, we've got to
conviction
turn
of
our
like,
heads.
oh, I just learned about this. Let me be better about actually putting my fork down in a meal, or actually like eating, making better choices on my plate. And so I always thought that was funny because it stuck though, and in really good ways that I've seen people like really transform their life. And I think that's really important. We, as we get older, as things, our body changes, as time changes, when we're taking good care of ourselves, we can really do it in these simplified ways. It doesn't have to be complicated. I think that you're right, Chris. If we overcomplicate it, that's when we're not setting ourselves up for success. But by giving ourselves a little bit of an education, adding just a few things here and there, that can really, really make a difference for us. And I want to also go back to your comment about stress, because this
Mm.
was one I really, really learned about. I lost a brother-in-law back in 2010 to gastric cancer.
Mm.
And when I look at his life, it was so stressful. I mean, that was
Oh
like
yeah.
was working all the time, and it was lots of a heavy load of like people and heavy stuff all the time, and rarely took breaks. And his diet suffered for it as well, because again, too busy, so can't really take care of himself nutritionally. And if you read the statistics and you read up on stress, it's literally, that is the number one killer. It's
Oh,
more than
it'll
anything
put you in the
because
ground.
because it's what leads to all of the other things. And we are such a hustle society here in America. And I feel like that's the other piece of this, where can we all take some time to actually sit and be bored anymore, because we don't do that, right? We don't want to be bored. And there's so many things that can keep us busy, and so many things that can keep us going. There's so much content to consume. There's so many games to play. You can't even stand, no one stands in line anymore. Everyone stands in line and watches their phone and
Yep.
plays a game or has a phone call or
Certainly
does a
doesn't
thing.
talk to anybody in line.
No, they certainly don't. Yeah. And so this is where I'm like, wow, like, where did we lose sight of that? And so there's a mindfulness piece of this too that I think is really important, that people, can sit with. And it's okay, y'all, to sit with the
Well,
quiet
and
sometimes.
honestly, it's actually, there's a lot of studies on this subject. And so I've been self-employed since I was in my early 20s. And so stress is part and parcel of that world.
Yeah.
When I got into TM, Transcendental Meditation, one of the things I liked most about it was that I I'm just too zzz all the time. I needed something that I could do anywhere that would be
Mm-hmm.
super easy for me. And instead of asking me to calm my brain down, instead I fill it up with the mantra, like this repetitive thing that you say in your head. And
Yeah.
it really, really, like, I can feel it right now. Like, I know I've been up running around all today, and I know I'm going to go, like, after we finish this interview, I'm going to take 15 minutes, do my little TM thing. And
Mm.
then for the rest of the day, it'll be like, it's like resets my baseline. And there's a lot of studies that show your performance significantly higher after
Mm.
you do some form of meditation for the next few hours. Like, you really reset your brain, and it's super good for your blood sugar. It's super
Yeah.
good for your heart health, super good
Yeah.
for everything. And we just got to bake it into your life. That's the
Mm.
thing that I have found is, if I can't bake it into my life, I'm probably not going to do it. So I've
Right.
got to, like, find, that's why habit stacking is such a thing for me. I got to find these things where it's like, when this happens, do this. Like, if I'm on an airplane, I'm doing TM as soon as the plane takes. So, like, once we get over 10,000 feet and they stop making announcements and crap, I do 20 minutes of TM right then. And it's
Yeah.
every single time I travel, that's what I do. And just putting these little habits in place that you're like, oh, that's a self-reinforcing behavior that will help you get to where you want to get to. Because that's the problem, is we torture ourselves for our failings. That's what I mean about forgiveness. Like, you
Yes.
just, they're like, oh man, I didn't do my TM for a few days. I suck. Blah, blah, blah. Right? You can do that. And when you do, you just, man, it's so bad for every system in your body.
Yep.
But then if you can get it to a system and get into this thing where it's like, oh yeah, I didn't do it for 3 days, but I'm going to do it today.
Right.
And that's the big difference, is coming back and being like, it's a system. I will get to it. I will follow the path. And if I follow the path, I'll get there. That's, to me, like, what did I write about? I wrote largely about that. The science,
Mm.
the stuff about soluble fiber and stuff like that, they started figuring that out in the 70s. This is
Mm.
not new data. That's the
Mm-hmm.
crazy thing. Like, when
Yeah.
people read stuff about it nowadays, it's like, oh my God, this great revelation. I'm like, from like 1972? I mean, like, but it's true. Like, but sometimes it takes that long for us to all realize, like, oh, actually, there really is some good science on this that gives us a
Mm.
path. That doesn't mean I go and get on Ozempic and spend $1,000 a month trying to fix my sugar problem,
Right.
when for the price of Brussels sprouts, I could fix my sugar problem. You know?
That's right. That's right. Oh, so good, Chris. And really quick, just because I know there's some people on the line that don't know what transcendental meditation is, can you
Sure.
just give us a quick,
I'll give you like 15 seconds in TM.
yeah.
All right. So instead of mindfulness or some types of meditation where you're trying to quiet your mind or focus on your breathing or something along those lines, transcendental meditation centers around a single word. And TM practitioners get a little crazy about the mantra and stuff, but it's called a mantra. right? And what you basically do is you sort of say this word in your head over and over and over and over again for 15 to 20 minutes. And what this does is, if you watch on brainwave scanners, what it's basically doing is it ends up quieting your mind by filling your mind. And so for short attention span theater people like me, who are like definitely ADHD types, quieting my mind never worked for me. I could never do it. Like I would try, and if it wasn't a guided one, which is hard to do, I would fail at it. Whereas TM, because it fills your brain up with this noise, if you will, it basically drowns out all of the other thoughts. And you just basically concentrate on repeating this mantra. And what it does is it alpha waves your brain out. And then like when you're done with your TM, you're like, man, I feel like I just took a 20-minute nap. I mean, if you feel great, and that feeling is frankly addictive. You get to it, you're like, hey man, you know what I need? I need 15 minutes to, and it's great because you don't have to be quiet, right? I do this in an airport, right? I'll sit at the airport by the gate and be like, all right, I'm gonna put my sunglasses on so nobody notices my eyes are closed, and and just TM out. I could do it in a crowded room, no problem. And that's why I like that. But that's, like I said, from a sugar standpoint or stress control standpoint, whatever meditation you'll do is the best one.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And to piggyback on the transcendental, if you guys have ever seen like shows, or you've seen like the person sitting in the yoga pose that's going om, or the one who say I am.
Same thing, but imagine saying it quietly in your head.
That's right, exactly. So that's what Chris is talking about. And so you also know, for those of you who are not up with the meditation practices, there's lots of different kinds of meditation. There's also walking meditation.
Oh yeah.
There's actually like a yelling meditation. So if you really got to get it out, you can do that as well. And it's not necessarily just the very quiet, hoping that you just can sit there and quiet your mind completely. That doesn't work for everyone. I will tell you all that as calm of a person as I am, when I started my practice, it was definitely one where it was much harder for me to sit. These days, not as much, but because it's a practice, and that's part of anything new, right? It's being able to practice it till you actually can feel the benefits of it, and you're like, oh, this is what we're talking about. And sometimes it's a state change, right? And so it's like any new habit that we're trying to form, any kind of new thing that it's like a brand new telephone, right? If we get that new cell phone in our hands, we fumble around with it a little bit before you know it, you know how to use it. And it's the same with stress management and with being able to have these moments with yourself that are a break from just the busyness of life and the stress of life, because we've got to do some just better things for ourselves. So Chris, thanks for writing that book. I know that there's a lot of folks that are worried about diabetes and its effect on us, and obviously stress levels. And I love that you dive into all the things, because it really is not, I think, one thing.
It's not one magic answer.
It's not one magic answer. It's many things that come together. The same with how people, develop disease and things like that. It's usually not one thing. It's over time, a development of kind of many other things. And so it's really, really important, I think, to be able to catch that. Yeah. Amazing. Chris, how do folks get in touch with you if they'd like to grab your book, if they'd like to follow you?
So all of that, beatingdiabetes.us is the website. It's also Instagram handle, Beating Diabetes US, TikTok, Beating Diabetes US, and LinkedIn. So yeah, any of those, and you can buy the book in both digital and physical form from several different types of booksellers right from the website. I've got the links sitting right there.
Amazing. Thank you. Folks, if you want to get in touch with our guest today, just check out the show notes or pop down into the comments section, and you are going to see ways to get all the goods. And that is today's show. We are on YouTube at the MADLOVE Your Life Show, and also on Apple and Spotify if you prefer to listen to the podcast. We do love it when you like and subscribe, because it lets the algorithm know this is shareable, quality content. To get more information on the MADLOVE that's available for you, you can also pop over to my site at maryd.com. And until next time, may abundance always walk beside you. May joy always go before you. And may love always light and guide you on your path. Thank you for tuning in to today's show. We air live every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Bold Brave TV. We hope to see you back next week. For more ways to connect with my guests, content, programs, and retreats, just head over to www.marydee.com and subscribe. That's MARYDEE.com.